Hello and welcome to Iron Age Media. Today we'll be talking to George Alexopoulos. Best known for his political cartoons, he's also a talented illustrator and comic book artist. His most recent project, in collaboration with Razorfist, Ghost of the Badlands, raised over 300K. We'll be talking a little bit about that, but mostly we'll be discussing the creative and cultural efforts of the right and at least the non-mainstream. We also will be discussing some of his previous works like Mary Sue, Bad Dreams, and Goofberry Pie. Links to all of those will be in the description. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, George. Thank you for joining us today. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you for the
And
invitation.
yeah, well, I saw you talking recently on Twitter about art and the conservative space, and being one of the, I think, more prominent artists within especially the political right. Um, I was curious, how have you felt with the attempts from various conservative um, factions? Do you think that they are making good faith efforts to make art? How do you feel like that can be improved? And what do you see the future of art in the right wing space?
Well, there's a lot of different factions on the right. You got the libertarian-ish types. Obviously, Eric July recently, I think his campaign's going for like 3 days or something.
Hmm.
He broke 1 million last
Yep.
night. Although I'm not sure if he would call himself right. Um,
Yeah, he's pretty solidly libertarian, I would say. He's
yeah.
certainly not left. Let's put it that way, which kind of is a sore is a whole big tent umbrella, which seems to catch a lot of people these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, if I say us, what
Hmm.
do I even mean anymore? I'm not sure because you got the people on the Matt Walsh right, who I am definitely not on the same team as far as how they feel about culture and the arts. I'm not hard libertarian either. I'm not a Republican, but I'm not left leaning, so I don't know what I am, except I kind of. Someone said I'm an Overton right leaning, something like that, because the
Okay,
over.
yeah.
I think that might be accurate. As far as all the different factions go, I mean, I guess we would have to go down them one by one as far as what I think they're doing right and what they're doing wrong.
Well, do you think that
Um,
there's a particular group that, or you mentioned Eric July. Do you feel like he's an example of somebody who is sort of on the maybe, like you said, not necessarily the right, but sort of outside the mainstream, that is doing things well in your mind? I mean, he's certainly being very successful,
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, he's doing well financially. As far as does this have longevity? We in the indie space, whatever that means, I would even see it as an apolitical space, to be honest.
mhm,
Part of it is that we are fighting against the see, because the mainstream has been taken over by the left and the far left. So by default, it's people who they won't hire who are going to start running indie campaigns. And you end up with people who have YouTube channels and big social media presences, and they run campaigns. And because they have such a huge audience, the audience is willing to invest in anything they'll make pretty much. Um,
mhm.
so by default, we are fighting against the mainstream comics in Image, DC, Marvel. I don't know about Dark Horse. I don't hear anyone ever talking about them anymore. But the general, you got to get past editors and you've got to get past publishers, and generally they operate out of big cities like Portland and New York, and they are left leaning. And so, are we doing better on the in the independent sphere? Um, there are definitely high watermark campaigns going on. I suppose Ghost of the Badlands was a high one as
Mhm.
well. But I had no control over that, really. It was just sort of my posture was I'm going to make a book with a really awesome YouTuber who I respect a lot. And whatever happens, happens. And I think that was
Mhm.
his. I won't speak for him, but I think that was his posture as well. We're just going to launch this thing and see what happens. Um, I think I guess we would have to look at all the campaigns being run right now and look at sort of the median. how much are we making as a huge community? Uh, I'm probably very far off base with your question.
No, no, it's all right. I'm like we said, I mean, I'm fine with kind of an organic, just meandering conversation. I think that
Yeah.
you have a very different insight into the space than a lot of other people because, um, even myself, like I've run one campaign and I have, I was happy with it. It did well, but that's I'm not really necessarily a creator in the sense that I am the one producing the artwork or the stories, and so I think it's interesting to get the perception from somebody who's on that other side. Um, Now, with the market being, kind of, well, it's very hard to get a number, right? Because, like you said, everything is so fragmented, and we do have these high water marks. Um, do you think that I guess I would say is do you think that this is a viable path forward in the long term? You kind of mentioned whether or not we'll see whether it works out in the long term, or do you think that there needs to be some kind of I don't know, like corporate buy-in or like a big cultural change? Do you see any of those things happening, or what are your thoughts on more long term?
It's a very deep question. If I was a publisher, I would be pooping my pants because I imagine the outliers in the indie sphere are making so much money, even just gross.
Hmm.
And if we had the contacts that they had, we would be making so much more profit per unit than they are.
Yeah.
But they're not selling enough copies, I don't think. Considering their vast reach, a self-made YouTuber like Eric July, I'm sure I don't even know. I don't want to speak for him too much, but he's right now kind of kicking so much butt. I don't want to curse on your stream. Um,
You're free to.
okay, he's kicking so much ass that it's if I was a publisher, I'd be looking at this and saying, how can we possibly replicate this? And the truth is they can't because they
Yeah, no,
don't
that's
have
impossible for them.
from a marketing perspective, what's happening for someone like him is he has a active, passionate audience that tunes into his stuff every day, and they will support pretty much anything he makes. And they are showing that with their dollars. And uh, the big publishers of American publishers, Japanese is very different. American publishers have been pumping out garbage for decades, and we've been eating their scraps. And as far as longevity goes, the real test will be, will the projects that are getting funded be delivered on time? That's a huge factor. Will the quality be at least up to par with the competition on the store shelves?
Hmm.
And will the creators be able to pump out more in volume over the next few years? Because making a book or two per year per creator is nice, but we're dealing with an industry that craves hundreds of pages of content per month across
Oh yeah.
various creators. So we have a very big hill to climb as far as not just quality but volume, how much we
Hmm.
put out per year. And even if you give a creator $1 million every 6 months or something, that one creator is going to have to hire people to help him
Hmm.
or her. And now you've got other problems because even if I make $1 million, I now have to pay a staff. It seems like a lot of money at first, but then we're talking gross. And I don't think a lot of people realize the net that you collect for yourself is actually shockingly low. Once you factor in production costs,
Hmm.
shipping costs, you're paying for a warehouse now. I'm sure Eric would love to
Yeah.
talk about this. So he has talked about this. You're paying so many other people just to help you deliver the product that you don't even have time to spend whatever you have left over at the end of it. And not
Hmm.
a lot of people realize, oh, he made $1 million, but how much of that million is he really going to keep at the end of all this? And he has more books to pump out after this.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So longevity is really the challenge.
Well, and that's I think that there's a couple things that I want to go into. I think the first one is that one of the things I've noticed in the past is that you said, uh, just continuing to harp on the Eric July example here, but he has um, people who tune in every single day and will, to a certain degree, buy, I mean, probably not anything that he puts out, but they'll at least give anything he puts out a chance, right? And, uh, I was reminded of the fact that for a long time, in the kind of conservative, like talking head space, like Bill O'Reilly, the old Fox News pundits during the Obama years, they were like, well, conservatives read so much more. And like every 3 months, these guys would put out some book just kind of, basically reiterating something that we all already knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And do you think that the, do you think that the indie space is um, more insistent on getting something new for their money? Because I feel like a lot of, you know, the kind of like the political talking heads, they just put out a book. It had their face on it. The person bought the book and they put it in their office. They might read it, they might not. You know what I mean? Do you think that there's a different um, dynamic with kind of these indie creators and that there's more of a demand for quality and originality within those works?
Well, I can only speak for myself as a consumer. I could also speak as a producer, but I have very high standards of quality where I will absolutely not buy a book that a creator a creator I like, if they just slap their name on it and poop out a book, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to
Hmm.
read it. There are cases where I might buy it sort of out of sympathy if I guess if they need money or something, and if I have money, I will buy their book to support them. But that's not the I mean, let's be honest, that's really not the formula for success. We need a Watchmen, we need a Dark Knight Returns, we need
Hmm.
a golden goose, several golden geese that will put the mainstream to shame as far as story quality goes.
Yeah.
Uh, Even during the Image Revolution in the early 90s or something, Spawn, for all its faults, was still a kick-ass book. People wanted to read Spawn. They wanted to buy it. There were many Image properties that were selling a lot, but weren't necessarily of high quality. And one of the big criticisms back then when they were starting out was this is a publishing house filled with artists, but not writers.
Mm.
And a lot of the stories were criticized for having sort of basic writing, and they brought in writers and stuff. And Walking Dead was the first property. No, Walking Dead, Kirkman was the first writer that joined the partners of Image that was just a
Hmm.
writer and not an artist. So it took that many years, whenever Walking Dead came out, for them to bring in somebody who sold that many copies.
Yeah.
Um, as far as longevity goes, all right. I like to pick on Matt Walsh, for example, because I think I see him as a peer as far as um, I don't know. I don't want to sound too much like a jerk, but all right, he put out Johnny the Walrus, let's say, and that was a response to Anti-Racist Baby. And Johnny the Walrus is sort of, I was surprised by how few pages it had. I was surprised. I don't want to pick on the artist, but the art was not the best and the writing was not the best. And I think it was just a book that was kind of like, hey, watch us sell 20 bazillion copies. And
Hmm.
we're just kind of making a tongue in cheek satirical book. And then I read that and I'm like, this is not, no one's going to keep this on their shelf like Winnie the Pooh. Like, this is not a classic. This is kind of, I won't call it a cash in or cash grab or something, but it was not a work of quality. And
Well,
I would, yeah.
no, I was going to say, well, I think that one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes books that are ostensibly written like for children, this is a particular example, are very much more kind of angled in towards the adults, and would you say, I haven't read Johnny the Walrus. Is that the case that it was more kind of like a satirical thing that only a parent like a politically aware parent would understand rather than a kid would enjoy at a fundamental level?
I think that's a fair statement. It is written in sort of a quasi rhyme.
Hmm.
I have it behind me. I can show you, but it's yeah, it's really kind of a tongue in cheek satirical. Johnny wanted to be a walrus, but he can't be a walrus. That's silly,
Hmm.
and it's not something I imagine a kid would demand their parent read to them at bedtime every night.
Yeah.
Um, it's more of a product, and again, I don't want to pick on him specifically too much, even though he's my sworn enemy. Um, I want to challenge people in the whole indie space to not just make books that are, um, hey, buy this book and let's get back, let's show them how much money we can make
Hmm.
by like numbers sold shouldn't only be the way that we're measuring success. It should be overall quality of a book.
Hmm.
Um, and that's something that everybody should challenge ourselves. Like I'll speak against my for myself. Ghost of the Badlands I'm working on now. I'm super worried that I will not be worthy of this project. So I'm going way over the like I'm holding myself to such a high standard that it's almost unreasonable. But I think making myself uncomfortable in that way is going to benefit the project in the long run, even though it tires me out a lot. Um, and I could talk about the project some more, but like I really want to impress the readers. I want to impress Razor. I want to do such a good job that people will say, "Wow, this really stands up against anything on the store shelves right now."
Hmm. Well, going rewinding just a small amount, how do we get to the point where we are um, gauging things on quality rather than uh, just quantity? Because, like for example, it's easy to look at, for example, the high watermark campaigns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's difficult to have um, like for lack of a better word, like taste and quality and all these other things. There's a certain education and exposure that has to go along with it to understand. Like I admittedly, I'm a relative neophyte whenever it comes to comics in general. I've read some comics, but I haven't really looked at them and thought about them as a medium until very recently, you know? So, are, do you think that, are there reviewers or kind of tastemakers or things like that in the space that you see developing, or do you think that's something that needs to happen, or do you think that there's a different way forward
It
on
does
that?
need to happen. Look at when I was in my 20s, game reviewers were kings when it was they were taste makers. They
Hmm.
would recommend indie games. They would recommend the indie like Steam was just blowing up with games like Super Meat Boy, which was
Hmm.
originally on Xbox Live. And the only reason we knew about these indie games was because known critics would go out of their way to review these games made by one or two people and then say, hey, this game is it looks indie, but it plays as good as any AAA title coming out right now. And in the years following, indie games kind of took over as, in my opinion, the better quality product. Just if you measure them against their budget, they did better, in my opinion, than many AAA
Dollar for
games. That
dollar, yeah, certainly.
yeah. So there is a role in, let's say, the indie space right now in comics. There need to be better critics who have really good reputations as being honest um, and giving good recommendations. Now, I don't mean critic just in talking about like what book sucks and why it sucks, even though that gets more clicks. They need to be able to say, this book is great. I recommend this. I've read this, and this is why I like it, and this is why I want to see more from these creators. Criticism is, in many ways, it's one of the key jobs to have a healthy industry. Um, as far as you were mentioning, what is it? Well, let's put it this way: as a creator, it would obviously hurt my feelings if I learned that one of my books was not up to quality or something. But I need to know if my book is not good enough. If people overall don't like it and they say why, and these are fair reasons, and it's not just they're not just poo-pooing me because I'm being a jerk or something online. But like, take my book Mary Sue, which I've done years ago, or Bad Dreams or something. Didn't sell a ton of copies, but I look back at them now and I still like I like the art a lot. And generally, I don't like my own stuff, but I look at it and I tell myself I wish I had an objective reviewer telling me what they like about it, what they don't like about it. Um, I, as a creator, need to know, am I doing something well? Do I need to keep going this way, or do I need to find another way so that I can ultimately put out a better product so that I can please the audience? And then it creates a positive feedback, like a snowball effect.
Hmm.
Good reviews, genuinely good reviews, not butt kissing, lead to more sales, which leads to a better quality product, and it creates a nice feedback loop. But there's a lot of stories, like say in the gaming industry, where games journalists who barely even know how to play video games will say, "Oh, this is an A+ game," and then I'll buy it, and I'm like, "This is actual trash." Like God of War Ragnarok. I don't want to piss anyone off by saying this. I hate that game. It's
Is that the
so
latest
stupid.
one? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
I couldn't play it. I played it for like a half hour, and even though it like had 10 out of 10 reviews all over the place, meanwhile I'm playing this little indie game here or there, and it has no reviews, but I've played it for like 100 hours,
Yeah.
and it's amazing. So that's where we are in the indie space. We don't have marketing budgets. We can't pay off giant corporations to review our stuff. We rely on word of mouth. And in order to generate good word of mouth, one of the ways is to put out an outstanding product. Um, so I would I've been putting my eggs in the basket of, if I keep putting out good books, eventually that will lead to success, because people will say, I've read one of his books, I liked it. I've read two of his books, I've liked them. I'm going to now buy his whole library and
Hmm.
say, I have 15 books right now you could buy of mine. If someone buys all 15 books, that's a huge boost to my business.
Hmm.
Um, so
So
word of mouth.
uh, I have a maybe slight question for or criticism to the idea of for like the need for reviewers or critics, for
All
example.
right.
I generally agree with you, but what would you say to people who would say, well, the customers are the critics? So like if you don't get sales, then like if you're as long as you're getting sales, it's a good product. You know what I mean?
What would I say to people who say
Yeah, so
that?
somebody let's say that we have somebody who wants to um take we've already brought up Matt Walsh, so let's bring him up again. Johnny the Walrus. Well, it sold a lot of copies, right?
Yeah.
Um Therefore, and the customer is the person, so if the customer bought it, they were satisfied. You know what I mean? So therefore that's an A+ across the board book. Um
Okay.
do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what's your counter to that
Well,
line of
I'm
reasoning?
an artsy fartsy person.
Okay.
So sales does not mean success to me.
Hmm.
Avatar 2 sold a bazillion copies worth of sales or whatever. People went to go see it. I
Hmm.
did not see it. I'm not interested in seeing it. Um, but just because something has a lot of sales doesn't necessarily mean it's a good product. And being an artsy fartsy type, I'm more interested in reading an excellent book or watching an excellent movie or playing an excellent game than how many sales it got. Unfortunately, we live in an unfair world where something that has a lot of sales doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
Hmm.
And something that's good doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make a lot of sales. So, on one hand, I can't disagree that it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to make a lot of money, then I can just didn't they publish Michael Knowles? They published an empty book and they said something like how to be a smart leftist or something like
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen a number of books like that. It's
Yeah,
like
these are
ways that
gimmicks,
communism works and things like
and the
that. You know,
book is blank on the
haha.
inside.
You know what I mean? It's
Okay,
funny, right?
so we can take that argument to its limit and say I could just poop on a piece of paper and ship it to people, and if they're willing to pay for it, does that mean the book was a success? I would have to ask then, what is your definition of success? Did I make a lot of money? Sure. Um, are people going to buy the next book, my next bowel movement? But I mean, truthfully, if your goal is money, I can't argue with you. But if
Hmm.
your goal is to make a superior product that can be held up against international standards, even decades from now, that's my goal as a creator. I want to make books that people will still read 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Um, so money doesn't even factor into that analysis, in my opinion. But I'm just a broke asshole who wants.
Fair,
I want to
fair enough.
make art. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But who's going to argue with me on this?
Hmm.
Uh, anyway, I don't want to
No, no,
talk too much.
I was just kind of wanted to, I figured what your response would be. I was just curious. So one thing that you just mentioned was that you hope that your work holds up against work from, you know, for decades. And that would include being compared to work, you know, decades in the past, things that have already passed through that filter. Um, One thing I've noticed in the indie space, and this relates to the whole question of critics and tastemakers, is that I will see people um, comparing pulp written by like modern authors to Robert E. Howard and or William B. Gibson, right? And I think that those are fair comparisons, but you also have to, in my mind, take into consideration the fact that, you know, like you're saying, these people are trying to improve, and that these are the best pieces from uh, the, you know, best creators of a singular era that was very prolific and successful. You know what I mean? So it's kind of an unfair comparison. What do you think is the fair balance for, uh, like, if somebody's looking to get into critiquing comics, what do you think the fair balance is in that,
Well, even
or
Robert E.
pulp or
Howard
whatever?
and Howard and Lovecraft and their contemporaries, they were putting out a lot of pulp, and I'm not sure they were famous in their time, were they?
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, Howard was to some degree, Lovecraft a little bit, but most of them were kind of. It's very much they're far more well known now than they
yeah,
were during their lives.
like I'm not going to act like they were underground hits, but I know a lot of them were struggling in their time to publish, and a lot of us in the indie world are struggling to find sales. And we have a business model where, fortunately, we only need to sell a few hundred or a few thousand copies to be successful.
Hmm.
Just enough money, I always say, to finance the next book, and then you can just keep it going. As far as criticism now, I mean, you have to ask who these critics are, though, because a critic's job is not just to thumb their nose and poo poo bad work. Their job is also to recommend excellent, obscure work. Like, I would never have known about Kurosawa if it wasn't for Ebert recommending.
Hmm.
He had a list called Great Movies, a book or something. And I was going through this book of movies I've never heard of because I was just like this 20 something kid who didn't really know. I liked movies, but I didn't know which movies
Hmm.
to watch next. If it wasn't for that list, I never would have discovered many of my favorite directors or gotten deep into what makes a great movie great. And these are people who live and breathe the medium and the craft of it. And it's not just I liked this movie. It's this is why it's a good movie and we're just going to talk about it. And that's one of the reasons I admire Razorfist so much is he helped me learn about noir and many great movies, even pulpy movies from the 80s that he just enjoys with so much glee. like just
Hmm.
explosions, and he'll laugh and talk about why, oh, this guy got blown up, and I'm watching and I'm laughing too because he's enjoying it so much. And it's like, oh, it's okay to enjoy Commando. It's okay to
Yeah.
enjoy Cobra.
Yeah.
That's how I discovered him, I think, is because of Cobra. But I think the role of the critic is necessary. Um, but I think your question was more in lines of let's not worry about high standards too much because we need to build up creators, something
Oh,
like that.
no, 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 not necessarily that. I'm just saying that there are, uh, like, I think sometimes that critics can be correct in their criticism, for example, of a contemporary author. You know what I mean? And but then like their 10 star, for example, is the best works of Robert E. Howard and Lovecraft, for example.
Yeah.
And uh, they look at something that a contemporary has put out, and like what do you see as a critic yourself? What role do you think it plays in the fact that you're comparing like true masterpieces to um, what are in some cases are amateur work? Is there any weight for the growth of an author or a artist, or do you think that those are just things that are entirely up to the author and the artist to believe in themselves and to kind of face the cold hard facts of things?
Well, a critic doesn't necessarily need to act like a middleman in saying, don't buy this book because it sucks.
Hmm.
It's more like I, as a creator, I have an inner critic, and he's a really nasty son of a bitch because he has seen all my work. Like just this morning, for instance, I'm working on a panel in Ghost of the Badlands that I had to draw 3 times because I can't get the pose right. And I'm getting so pissed off at myself. And my inner critic is saying, imagine if people could see how badly you're struggling right now. You're such a noob. You don't deserve to work on
Mm,
this. And he has been tormenting me the whole production so far. But that voice is also necessary to tell me, did I do a good job? When that voice is quiet, that means I did a good job because he won't compliment me, this inner asshole.
mhm,
But when I look back at one of my old books, like I was telling you about a book I did called Bad Dreams years ago, and I've always been embarrassed by my own work. But when I see it years later and I'm flipping through the pages, I'm like, damn, some of this art is really good. This
mhm.
story is really good. And it takes years for that voice to go away. And not to toot my own horn, but like while I'm making something, every book, that voice is telling me everything I'm doing wrong. And the reason we need to cultivate that voice is so that we can put out a book that we're not embarrassed by. I
Mhm.
am horrified of being complimented too much because that voice starts getting really proud and saying like, yeah, I am hot stuff. I am a great artist. And then I try to do some art and it's like, no, I actually suck. And whenever I do anything right, it's like an accident. It's a miracle. So that's why it's valuable to me
Okay.
to have that inner art, the inner critic.
Mhm.
Um, as far as getting in between creators and audience, look, I mean, if someone wants to buy a book and the creator puts something out and the audience wants to buy it, that's it. You have the transaction, book, money. Great. Let's do it
Mhm.
again. Book, money. I want to have a career that lasts for another 40 years, God help me.
Yeah.
And the only way I can get to that 40 years is by making books that I think are of the highest quality I can possibly do. Like to do a good job on Ghost of the Badlands, I need to go to Arizona. I need to
Mhm.
not only go there, I need to walk around. I need to touch the soil. I need to be in the landscape, and some by some osmosis, the art will come out of me somehow. I don't know. I don't even
Sweat
know how
until your
that's going to
socks
happen.
are soggy and you need to dry out your shoes.
That's the plan. I hope it works. I mean, but again, I could just sit in my comfortable little office drawing, and I'm sure the book would come out fine. And then I'm sure maybe even I could make another one if I was lucky enough to.
Mhm.
But the that doesn't satisfy me. That doesn't satisfy my inner critic. I want, like I was reading about Michael Mann, the director of Heat. Um,
Mhm.
and in order to make Heat, he did ride-alongs with police for weeks or months before the film's shooting even started in LA. He was immersed in LA's crime culture. He was talking to policemen. He was talking to criminals. He was visiting them in prison, if I recall. And he just submerged himself in the culture. And he doesn't. Not every one of his movies is excellent, but when it is excellent, you can really tell he really put in a lot of work, and I respect that with creators. But my goal, again, is to put out work that I'm proud of. And the only way I can do that is by being afraid of critics. Not just like there's audience members who will just buy a book because they're nice or they're
Hmm.
interested or they want to support. And that's really nice of them. But I also want to please people who hate me, and they
Hmm.
read their book and they have nothing to say because I've shut them up by how good it is. That's the prize I'm after.
Yeah.
Um, but who am I to stand between creators and their audience? If you make a book and people want to buy it, God
Yeah.
bless you.
So one thing that you talked about, and this is something I wanted to uh, cover, and you just have brought it up, is video games and their role as you see it as far as like art and everything else. Do you obviously you are of the opinion that video games are art? Do you feel like, as a medium, that's something that you would ever be interested in trying to do work with or something like that?
Actually, before I was doing comics, I was working on games
Really?
as an animator. Yeah, I did UI design, some game design. I
Hmm.
was working with little teams. So, like, we would have these meetings and I would work with them. Um, yeah, I would get back into that. Um, as a matter of fact, if I had the budget, I would make. I have two graphic novel scripts that I don't have the time to draw, but they would make. There's a genre called visual novels, if you're
Hmm.
familiar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like an RPG without a battle system. I would make a game like that where it's like a comic. You make story choices, and it leads to branching story paths. Um, I could easily see myself making something like that, but that's another full time job, and I don't have time for that right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm interested, but it's like I also want to write a romance novel right now. Like I was jokingly talking about they call him MAGA Man, I think, where
Oh,
he's
yeah, I think I recently saw him in your comics,
yeah.
going around and planting the American flag in various places.
I love the idea of like a western, not western. So say like a New York journalist, Brooklyn lady goes down to the South to interview Southerners and MAGA people to learn what makes them tick and like are
Hmm.
they even human? Like
Yeah, the whole it's the same trope that you see repeated many, many times where a journalist, it's like Jane
50 Shades
Goodall
of Grey
going
or something.
gorillas in, yeah, no, like Jane Goodall, Gorillas in the Mist or something. Oh,
Yes.
these uh these
The
redneck
subhumans.
conservatives, they have a tribal family system, you
Yeah.
know.
Can you believe they
Yeah,
actually seem to be like human or something?
yes,
And
they imitate humanity.
I
Yeah.
love the concept of her going down and patronizing them and discovering that like she falls in love with some guy.
Hmm.
And I would write it in such a way, and you're okay with cursing and lewd language on
Yeah,
your
yeah,
channel?
go nuts.
So like I love the idea of he planted his flag in my Iwo Jima. He pumped my oil fields. He
Oh
drank my
dear.
milkshake. And bro, I was writing lines and I was crying laughing at how stupid and amazing it could be, but it's like, do I really want to write a I just did a children's book and now I'm going to do a filthy romance novel and I'm like,
Yeah.
but my gauge is does it make me laugh? And the
Yeah.
answer is yes. So I should make it. Not because I want money, but because it's funny. So that's been my guiding principle. Whenever I make a strip, like right now, I'm making a comic about some chick from Brooklyn, and she was talking about how she's poor and her mom was poor, and she has she's like a professor at an Ivy League school or something, and she was saying,
Hmm.
and she bragged about building this amazing library or something, but she says she's poor. And I just love the idea of a woman sitting in her amazing library, looking out the window, asking, "When will I escape poverty?" And it's like, but my again, if it makes me laugh, I have to draw it. And I don't remember what the question anymore.
Well, I was just
Oh,
asking about
video games.
video games, but
I'm
no, that's
sorry.
fine. We rambled off. That's great. I enjoyed hearing about uh, the potential romance novel here. I
I have to draw.
all I
I have
gotta
to
say,
write it.
if you write it, you need to include a scene where she goes to the gun range for the first time,
Oh,
and
definitely.
oh
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
it's or even better, going out to
Oh
a
my
public
gosh.
range and shooting trash. Uh, there's too much potential, I feel like, with something like
It
that.
it has to be so patronizing. Like the whole book, she has to think she's better than him. I know. I got it. It's just a
Okay.
matter of I'm going to like write it in the next few weeks or something.
This is gonna turn into a pitch session if we're not careful.
No, we
Um,
can't do that.
no, well, I was gonna say, as far as the um, kind of circling back on movies and video games, within the indie space, there are both, or I guess I should say, outside the mainstream, there's healthy, um, certainly a healthy indie video game scene. Now, with indie movies, I still feel like that's kind of you have sort of an avant-garde section, and then you have people who are doing stuff that is going primarily like direct to YouTube, and they're testing out short films and things like that within kind of I guess the same space that like kind of the Iron Age occupies, which is a little bit more politically dissident. Do you see any anything popping up in either of those mediums that is really interesting to you, or that you think should be highlighted?
Oh, I mean, I should have a list. I don't have as much time as I would like right now because I'm in
Yeah, me
production.
either.
Yeah. Do I see anything popping up? Uh,
Well, I was just, if there's any projects or people that you feel like, oh man, this guy's doing something amazing. Um,
I'm
Go
out of
check it out.
touch.
No, no, I
I'm
I can
sorry.
relate.
No, because I've been so production wise, all I can think about is how to get this book out on time.
Hmm.
And when I relax, it's on the couch and like I'll play Diablo or Street Fighter for a little while
Hmm.
and then I go to sleep.
It's good that you're staying up on Street Fighter. I wouldn't want one of the Daily Wire folks to get you over there for free.
I
Uh,
challenge
it,
them. I
it,
think I can beat their whole company and they won't even win a round against me.
oh,
But I would like them, if there's that conversation of are video games art? I suppose the correct answer is video games can be art.
well, yeah.
But anyone who claims that they're not, I would challenge them to think, okay, you've got artists, visual artists, writers, programmers, level designers. All of these things are art, but for some reason they think when you combine all these skills, it's not art. And it's just
Yeah,
there.
I do not understand the logic on that one. I mean, it's kind of one of these things where I was talking to uh I was interviewing a musician and DJ named Akira the Dawn a while back, and he said that an artist is someone who makes decisions, right? So, if you decide to put this line here, if you decide to add this beat, I think that there's probably a little bit more of like with the goal of achieving some level of beauty or something like that, right? um, to me, it, really the medium can change, and you can get more and more complex interweavings of these things. And there's certainly, I don't know, just like you say that, video games can be art. I mean, there are times when, like you say, like books can be art. You know what I mean? But then there's other times when it's definitely not. It's just uh, a joke. Which by itself it might be funny to have a blank book. That's a joke, but I don't know if that's art. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's not necessary to get hung up, and I do this all the time on the word art. What does this
Mm,
mean? What does it mean to different people? That doesn't matter so much. What matters is, like, put it this way. My wife and I argue a lot about like what makes art good, and she says a lot of the time I'm not quote smart enough to distinguish what's good and what's not, and I don't think that's a necessary argument to make. It's really, what do you enjoy? What TV show do you enjoy? What book do you
hmm
enjoy? Does it matter if it's art or not? No. There's a lot of comics on my shelf that I own, but I don't enjoy reading them. I have to force myself to read them. Meanwhile, there are some books I have that I just cannot put down. Like, if I could make a recommendation here, here's a horror author, Junji Ito.
hmm
He makes amazing horror stories, gory, disgusting, horrific, but because they're snack sized, they're maybe like 30 pages, a lot of them, they're short stories.
Yeah.
I can pound one out in like 10 minutes and really enjoy reading it. And then there's this whole book that of filled with these short stories. And is it art? I don't care, because this is what I'm spending my time on, my leisure time, enjoying. I was enjoying
hmm
Cobra Kai for a little while, and now I hate it. Um, but I don't need to worry about is this art or not, because there is art that people claim is art, like oh, I don't know what's a AAA game that sucked, but everyone said was good.
Well, we can just go back to God of War Ragnarok, right?
Yeah, something like that, where a lot of people claim it's good because it has great graphics or something, but it's not to my taste. I hated it. And part of art criticism, and I think this is something that should not be discouraged, I need to honestly say I hated this game, and I need to be able to explain why I hated it, because
hmm
that's me sharpening my inner critic, saying I have to avoid these mistakes that this creator made.
Yeah.
And
So,
maybe, yeah.
oh, I was just gonna say, so to enjoy something, I sometimes think that it's like it's much easier to, and this is probably why it gets more clicks and more interaction, but it's much easier to be like, ah, that grain of sand in my shoe is bothering me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than say, I enjoyed the walk. I mean, why did you enjoy the hike through the woods? Well, because it was beautiful. What did you actually specifically like about it? The sunlight shining through the leaves or the birds, I don't know. But it's like if you have a blister on your foot and every step was agony. I hated that walk because I had a freaking blister on my foot. It's like that
Mm.
is the pain point makes itself evident. So do you think it's important to kind of um you know be willing to say I enjoyed this but I don't know why, as well as
Of,
say I disliked it for this reason,
of
for
course it's
example?
valid. Yeah, that's why I like to take friends to museums sometimes, and just the way I like to look at art at a museum is I walk until something stops me.
hmm
And then I don't even know why it stopped me, but I'm staring at this piece. Or sometimes you're on a walk or a drive and you realize you're in the zone. You don't know how or why you got there, but what really matters is that it feels right. It feels good, or something feels bad. Maybe you're in a bad mood.
hmm
Um, but that's part of the artist's journey. You have to be able to recognize I'm currently feeling something that's important. Why? And also, don't stop yourself when you realize you're in it. If I'm going on a beautiful walk yesterday, there was a really nice rain shower and we saw a huge rainbow.
hmm
And what I should have done was pulled over and stared at it. But instead, I just kept driving and I just went, oh, that's pretty. But as an artist, you have to recognize something extraordinary just happened. I need to examine why. And part of that is because I need to share it with other people. Part
hmm
of my job, I mean, let's put it, all right, if I write this stupid romance novel, right? And there will be lovemaking scenes or something. How can I write about how can I write a decent scene that is meaningful about making love if I'm a virgin, let's say, which I'm a totally gay virgin, right? If
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah.
online. But you have to be able to experience these things and then ask yourself, what am I experiencing? Why am I experiencing it? And then you convert it into something through a medium
Hmm.
to give that experience or part of that experience to other people. And that's what a story is. I experienced something firsthand, secondhand, and now I'm passing it on to you. And you can be enriched by that story. So really, it doesn't matter what medium it is. It could be music, movies, drawings, writing, a video game.
Hmm.
And that's what art is. And that's why it's important to me to go to Arizona, for instance, for research for this book, because if I'm just drawing a bunch of empty fields of sand with tumbleweeds, that's not really Arizona. Like I've been looking and researching like crazy. There's so many trees and amazing rock formations and
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
And I would feel like I'm lying to the audience if I write a book that's set, or if I draw a book that's set in that setting and I didn't experience it myself. Like I need to feel the heat, draw the sweat. Um, that will create superior art that I think is meaningful as opposed to something drawn from a comfortable office that's air conditioned.
Yeah.
I would not read such a book. So I don't want to produce such a book because I would be
Hmm.
ashamed.
And well, I think that one of the things that people sometimes forget, and this is harkening back a little ways to like the AAA games and everything else, is that various mediums have various strengths, right? So one thing that I appreciate that you're doing with Ghost of the Badlands is that you are making sure that you're getting as much of the personality of the location in as you can. Now, let's say a filmmaker was wanting to do a short film set in Arizona, but they don't live in Arizona. You know what I mean? They don't even live
Yeah.
in the United States. They just go to a dry desert place and shoot whatever shots they can. I think that one of the um, things that I am excited about with the whole Iron Age and the creators is that people are starting to look again at what makes each medium uh, what are the strengths of each medium, rather than just saying, oh, well, we need to have shiny things that look like this no matter what it is. What sells well in movies, explosions and sex scenes. Okay, well, we got to put that in our books. You know what I mean? These are very different mediums with very different strengths. And so I'm excited to hear that you're pursuing that kind of attitude with Ghost of the Badlands.
Well, there isn't anything wrong with enjoying the pulpy side of
Oh,
things. Like
sure.
I've never been a barbarian, but I'd love to write a Conan, let's say. Um, but there's things that give you a little extra realism. Like I don't remember if I mentioned this last time we talked about. I learned the differences between single and double action revolvers.
Oh, no, you didn't
Not
mention that, but yeah, that's a very important difference.
a huge difference, and part one of the main characters, Righty Red. I won't say the names just in case
Oh
it's
no,
spoilers.
we got we
No, no,
got
no. His name is Righty. We've said his name is Righty. He
okay,
uses a. Is it Schofield? Schofield?
Schofield.
Yeah. Model 3.
Yeah,
And it's what's the thing? It's
a top
t-
break.
top break. Yes.
Hmm.
I'm sorry for not knowing enough about guns,
That's all
but
right.
I've been researching them. So I'm like, okay, he has his right arm is missing, right?
Hmm.
In the first scene of the one of the first scenes of the book. So how is a man going to learn to shoot a gun with his left hand, a top break revolver, right? How is he going to reload it? And then I had to hold a model gun in my hand. I'm like, okay, I'm left-handed now. I'm going to press the button, pull the thing in front of the hammer to lower the thing, right? Eject the cartridges, and now I'm going to put it under my arm. How am I going to load this thing? I'm reaching in my pocket. And there's all these little details. It wasn't in the script, but these are things you have to think about as a creator. I'm going to take extra panels. I'm going to create extra panels where it's necessary, or even Righty has to open a letter. He just woke up minor spoilers. He just woke up in a bed. There's a letter next to him. He has to reach for the letter, open it, and he's going to have to reach with his right arm and realize I don't have an arm anymore to open this letter. So he has to use his teeth to open the letter. These are details that I could only think of. Well, this is actually fortuitous for me because I know people who have had, I've known two amputees in my life,
Hmm.
and they've described in great detail, and I've seen them live and cope with having. My grandfather, for example, had both of his legs amputated because he had gangrene.
Mm.
And it's very advantageous for me, not to patronize, but like he's talked about phantom pains, and there's so many little details that I would not have thought to put in the book, but it adds so much richness. A
Hmm.
main character who has his arm missing now has to not only learn how to shoot a gun with his left hand, but he has to learn how to open a letter with his teeth,
Hmm.
or how to load a gun by putting it under his. It's he's losing his arm just past the
Above the
bicep.
elbow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a huge difference between, is it, am I below the knee, above the knee amputation,
Hmm.
and
Oh
you have
yeah.
to relearn how to walk. These are huge details. Fortunately, I know people who have gone through this, and I can ask them.
Hmm.
Not that I have to lose my limb, but these are,
Yeah.
this gives quality, lived
Well,
experiences.
it's one of those things, you going back to the gun aspect of it, because this is something that I think was majorly harped on for a while. And I'm a bit of a gun guy, and I know a fair number of them. And that's why John Wick, you could you know have the later movies really lived up to it. It doesn't matter, but the first one, with the technical competency of the guns,
Mhm.
and Keanu actually going out there and doing some proper three gun drills and everything else, you know, before he even started shooting in the movie, like that kind of stuff comes across very much. And so, I think guns are kind of like one of the things that people have become aware of as being, just sort of hand waved, very frequently. Uh, but there's everything, just about every unusual detail. You put something into a piece of work, and it's very difficult to know all the ins and outs of it until you really know the subject.
And experience it. Can I give you an
Hmm. Hmm.
example? I have a model 1911 next to me. I'll just grab it for a sec. It's important for the example. So I bought this stupid rubber thing
Oh
because I live
yeah.
in New Jersey. I can't actually buy a model. I have to go and get like airsoft revolvers or something. So anyway, if I'm shooting a gun, right? It's a scene and it's like blam blam, right?
Hmm.
I would, if I didn't know about guns, I would shoot the muzzle flash like this, and the gun would be straight. But
Mm.
that would tell me I don't know. I've never shot a gun before, but I've shot a 1911, and I know, or any pistol, handgun, the actual pose would be this. It's
Yeah.
up because it is kicking me. And the muzzle flash would be here underneath.
Yeah.
Bang, bang. So it's kicking me back. So if I'm doing a shot where I'm shooting a guy, the gun will not be straight. There's a million little details like that. If you're When you're drawing a comic, you have to choose the exact moment when a guy gets shot or when a guy is shooting. And only if you've held and shot a gun in real life will you know, preaching to the converted. Um, and there's so much I don't know about guns, and I really regret that I live in New Jersey, and I really am struggling to learn as much as I can. Like I need to go and get these guns and shoot them. What is it like to unload and reload a top break revolver from 1800s? I don't know. I need to
Oh
go and
yeah.
find
That.
one.
Yeah. Well.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, but I think audiences can detect even subconsciously when a creator actually has experienced something versus when they're
Hmm.
faking it. And I it's important to me to experience as much, if my budget allows, if my personal time allows. I need to go and do as much of this stuff. I need to go and ride a horse still.
Hmm.
Um, and luckily, I know people who own horses, so I was able to go and study. I went to a rodeo, and there was a rodeo here in New Jersey, actually. my first time there, and I was learning about all the competition stuff they do, going around barrels really
Yeah, barrel
quickly.
racing and yeah.
And what is it with the lasso and stuff? I didn't realize they'll take two guys. One gets the horns of the cow and one gets the feet or something.
Yeah,
And
roping. Very yeah.
I was looking at, I guess you could call it a sport now, whatever they do. But like,
It is a sport. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
the amount of skill and practice that's involved is so incredible to me. And even just drawing a scene where a guy is shooting guys one-handed on horseback is superhuman, especially if it's a single action.
Oh
Like,
yeah. I
and
can't I
I
would never have really thought about that as much until I tried to do it probably, but
it's
yeah,
superhuman
shooting single action is already a pain and holding
accurately.
yeah,
Like,
accurately.
and
Shooting
it's
anything from horseback at speed accurately is
yeah.
I imagine pretty stinking difficult.
And range is a huge factor.
Oh
If
yeah.
I'm watching now a Clint Eastwood movie where he does the
Oh
ba ba
yeah.
ba ba and they all fall down, I'm like bullshit.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I've
Yeah.
actually fired a gun, I'm like there's no way. And if I was to make a western now, a movie like that, I would have them dodging and falling and missing all the time
Hmm.
because that's what a real gunfight would be like, I imagine. I don't
Well,
I I don't like how cheesy, forgive my naivete. I don't like the bang 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 everybody falls cuz it seems so easy.
yeah,
But
it does. We were my wife and I recently watched Pale Rider,
mhm,
and uh, one of the things that I think is probably better about that. Now, there are times whenever you have that kind of bang bang, everybody falls down kind of moments in plenty of Clint Eastwood movies. But in Pale Rider, he's luring them into various ambushes, and I think that that is probably one of the better aspects of the film because in the old west, you did not go out and duel at high noon, um, if you wanted to keep dueling at high noon for very long. You know what I mean? That was a short-lived profession because
yeah.
uh, there's documented cases of people, um, y- you know uh, running out of ammo in duels. You know what I mean? And so they'll shoot, or they'll have a chain fire or a misfire or something like that, and then they're out. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's you versus a guy with a gun that you just tried to kill. You know?
Yeah, and I think knowing that would make a more exciting gunfight anyways.
Hmm.
I don't know why they didn't do it back then. I don't like the idea of did I lose you?
No, no, no. I'm still here.
Oh. Um, but again, this is me saying now that I have the opportunity um, to do a story set in this universe, this old universe, having shot some guns, it's like, okay, they're going to miss 50% of the time, maybe. And the bullets that do hit are not going to hit vital areas and drop the guy in a second. And that's
Hmm.
why I kind of not criticize John Wick, but I was watching part three and I'm like, what's her name? The lady, Halle Berry.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I really that one. I saw that one, and it was just too much for me. I was
She's
like,
standing in the middle of a
she's really
courtyard.
trying. She's really trying.
Yeah.
She's doing everything she can.
And God bless him.
It does not work with the John Wick realism vibe, in my
No.
opinion.
Because she's standing out in the open and guys are running up to her with a knife. And
Yeah,
it's why didn't he just stand back there and shoot her?
yeah,
What are they doing? Why do they keep running at her and she's flipping and all that stupid crap?
yeah.
But that's why I like John Woo because they're diving and flipping and they're getting hit all the time and there's explosions everywhere. And I can fully believe there's that amazing scene in the warehouse. He's just getting lit up, the main character, barrels exploding. He's flying behind, shattering glass, and people are going down. But man, he's getting beat up. And
Hmm.
I want, I don't want to sound crass, but like it's, again, you're writing a lovemaking scene or making a show about, it's like, have you ever been in bed with anyone? You don't know what you're writing about. I don't want to sound crass, but like, that I demand higher quality in my entertainment because I have taste, I suppose, and I don't like the bang bang bang. I
Hmm.
want I want to tell myself if I was there, I would hide behind those barrels. I would run over there. I would shoot that guy, but I would probably miss. But
Well,
that's exciting
yeah. One
because
thing
it.
I will say in defense of John Wick 3, if you want to enjoy it, watch it as though you are appreciating the stuntmen, because
Oh
those
yeah,
stuntmen do more than I've ever seen trying to sell, making Halle Berry look like a plausible, you know,
yeah,
superhero badass female. They are going above and beyond to make make her even remotely
yes.
plausible.
I
But
love. Yeah, the craft is respectable.
well, and that's kind of the thing, is that there's so many different little pieces here and there that you can look at. Um, Whenever you are putting together these scenes from well, let's just go back to Ghost of the Badlands, and you're putting effort into things that a lot of people might not can't catch consciously. Oh, is there ever a point in time where you go, um, or is there anything in this particular project that you've run across where you're just like, I just don't know enough about this? Um, I don't feel like the audience is going to necessarily catch this either. Are there any things that you've run into that have been real pain points for you?
Um, yeah, every scene basically is like a foreign world to me because I've never been to the Southwest, like
Hmm.
deep Southwest. Um, I've never even been to the Midwest or further west, like Wyoming and stuff, where I
Yeah.
can actually touch these old cabins, or like I have to draw the inside of a saloon where a guy's staying in a hotel room, and I could use reference from, say, Deadwood or something like that, but
Hmm.
I think that would be cheating because now I'm copying. It's like making a game of telephone, perhaps, where
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
copying a copy of a copy from their research, and now I'm lying to the audience saying, okay, this character's lying in a bed in a hotel room. What's in the hotel room? Not just what's in it. What are the sheets made out of? What is the floor made out of? What does the ceiling look like? What's on the walls? What decorations? What kind of Victorian cabinets and dressers and bedside tables are there? Um, it's something that I think the readers would notice if it was done badly,
Hmm.
but if I do it well, they may not even notice.
Yeah.
But that's the reason. That's where the work comes in, of making a comic or making a movie or a game or anything. The attention to detail is so important because if it's not there, like one of my biggest criticisms of Denis Villeneuve, what's his name? He did Blade Runner 2 and
Oh,
Dune.
yeah.
His sets are so barren and lacking detail, and that's one of my biggest criticisms of him. Is he like Blade Runner 1 is filthy with detail. There's so much crap all over the place. It's so
Hmm.
lived in those sets. And part of it is the smoke and mirrors, but part of it is they just go and get junk and put it all over the rooms.
Hmm.
And when a room is clean, you know it's clean on purpose. And the Blade Runner 2 was so sterile and empty. The rooms seemed like concept art or something. It was so
Yeah.
empty. And it's something that bothers me. Not bothers me, like I'm gonna fix it. But as I'm penciling Ghost of the Badlands right now, there are so many details that, like, I'm doing a hotel room scene, like I was saying. I don't know what was in a hotel room, and I can look at photos, but I think it would be better for me to go to a museum in person and
Hmm.
walk in the very rooms and look at the old furniture and touch the furniture and just feel it with my hands, all of my senses, smell the air, because then I can reproduce it faithfully. So every scene of Badlands I have to do a jail, a forest. I didn't even know Arizona had forests.
Hmm.
And then I was doing research And part of when I go there, I have to go to these forests where they're called ponderosa pines. I think
Yep.
there's a
I
lot
was
of
going to say the pine forest. It's
yeah,
funny. You're like a desert. Well, if it does have a forest, it's probably going to be like some kind of scraggly whatever. No, no, they're pine trees. You
yeah.
know.
And I couldn't have known. And thank God that I have a script that really is, he knows Arizona very well, Razor.
Hmm.
And so upon doing research, I'm like, okay, not only is it not a desert, the whole top half of Arizona is like a different climate because once you climb in elevation, apparently, you go up past Phoenix or something, there's this line of desert in the south and then high mountains, and then you're at a higher elevation. The story takes place in the Flagstaff area, where
Yeah.
I think I was looking at the weather. Phoenix right now is like 100 degrees, and then Flagstaff is 70 degrees. That's how dramatic a temperature and elevation difference there is.
Yeah.
And I
Oh, it's
never,
huge. I mean, basically, you go north of anywhere north of, I think it's 40. Is it anyway? But yeah, it's like a very different space. That elevation change is massive.
yeah. But we have to think not in terms of human lines of this is the state. We have to
Mm-hmm.
look at geology, elevation. These are like I don't want to just draw stereotypical deserts, and it doesn't look like that anyway. I want to know what kind of flowers are growing in the field. Um, I want to know what type of grass that is. What type of stone is it? Sandstone? Is it uh, what's it called with all the layers?
Mm-hmm.
Sedimentary. How old is that rock? How much erosion has happened over how many thousands of years? And this is not communicated in the script, but it will be communicated in the art. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
missing, people who are from Arizona will know that it's missing. In the same way that if I draw guns badly, gun people will know that I
Yeah.
didn't actually hold that gun.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a matter of pride for me, and I would want critics to hold me to that standard because the project got funded really nicely, and
Mm-hmm.
what kind of embarrassment would it be if the artist didn't take some of that budget to go there when he could have? And
Yeah.
I would just be so embarrassed if I didn't take that extra step. So
Well, I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but on that note, I have no concerns about whether or not you're going to embarrass yourself on this, and I think that you and Razor are going to be putting out a really incredible project. I appreciate you swinging by and talking to me about just kind of rambling about everything art and culture for the time being. Um, is there anything that you want to shout out specifically? I know that right now, Ghost of the Badlands, um, the campaign is closed, but
mm.
where else can people find your work if they want to get something from you um, right now?
Well, the only book I have that was made this year was Goofberry Pie. Did I mention that last time?
I
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. I
All
was
right.
going to say
Well,
we mentioned Goofberry Pie, but this is a different interview, so go nuts.
Ghost of the Badlands, the campaign is closed, but it will be available for sale again after we ship and stuff. But if someone wants to buy my latest, where is Goofberry Pie? Here is a children's book that I did, and it's designed to be read to children from the parents and stuff. So it's like cutesy. It's about a little mouse who picks berries for his father's special cake. His mom baked a cake for him, and if anyone our age has kids and stuff or grandkids, niece nephews, it's perfect to read to them. There's tons of pictures, and hopefully, when I'm done with Badlands, I'll have time to do the next Goofberry. And but yeah, that's probably the best way to support us right now. It's actually available through my wife's children's shop, which is called Polkadot, Pokidot. You could find that through my
I'll put
Twitter
links in
profile.
description. Yeah, I was gonna
Yes,
say I'll
thank
put
you.
links in description. It's an Etsy shop, correct?
It's my wife's Etsy shop. She makes
Yes.
clothes, plushies, So you'll be helping my family, not me directly, but
Yeah.
Goofberry pie is available on her shop.
There's even a few plushy strudels at the moment, correct?
Yes, although she just announced that she ran out of stock. So if you want
Uh-oh.
to annoy her, you can buy some or request some.
There you go.
Yeah, they're
All
very
right.
cute and sweet.
Yes, they are. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you swinging by today. And hopefully, we'll get to talk to you here before too long about your as of yet untitled Southern romance novel.
All right, I'll tell you all about it next time. I may write it. I may
Yeah,
write it. I warn you.
he may. All right. Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Thanks for the invite.